The adventure begins in Loreto, the old colonial capital of Spanish California, established in 1697. It retains the charm and scale that Cabo has lost. The group grocery shops for shared meals, then departs by van for San Nicolas. San Nicolas is a couple of hours to the north, a tiny settlement reached by the winding main highway, then rough gravel road. The kayaks and gear were unloaded and camp set up. The first day's paddle leads south to a magnificent headland, El Pulpito. In the morning, we discovered shell midden from an ancient camp behind our tents. We found, and left where they were, stone waste flakes and tools, such as this interesting pick-like implement. Then we climbed El Pulpito. On the summit of El Pulpito are a number of little cleared areas with low rock walls partly surrounding them. After I found stone tool debris, I decided they are likely pre-contact features rather than recent tenting spots. They're very similar to what are called prayer seats found on some mountaintops in California state, and known to be locations where novices trained to gain spirit power under the tutelage of an older shaman. Rounding El Pulpito is just the first of a number of fantastic rock cliffs with sea arches and caves that we paddled along for the next several days. The bird life is particularly prolific at the headlands. Blue-footed boobies, cormorants, and the pterodactyl-like pelican are the most common. Sea arches are always exhilarating to paddle through, combining the eroding power of the sea and the solidity of bedrock. Fabulous rock structures are often revealed when you look straight up. Every campsite is beautiful, on sand or gravel beaches backed by dunes and rocky hills. After setting up camp, our guide Ryan leads us up an arroyo into a canyon where he knows there are pictographs. I photograph them, then use a program called D-Stretch to bring out the colors. Further north on the Baja, there are huge intricate rock paintings. These ones are simpler and show mostly large sea creatures. Doing a bit of bouldering allows you to get new perspectives. But just paddling gives endless opportunity to marvel at the colored rock layers and intricate formations. The tiny kayak gives a scale to the huge sea cave. Here nesting seabirds have created white stalagmites of guano underneath their resting spots. Although too far away for the GoPro to pick up more than the spout spray, this was a bucket list for me.
So what are those? They are blue. I was going to say they look very blue.
Every day, even stopping for lunch, there'd be something interesting archaeological, like this little chalcedony projectile point. I found it between my legs as I was sitting eating lunch right on the beach, and some of the others were initially concerned that I said we had to leave it there. These shells mark the site of an ancient camp, now eroding out of a dune. And here I'm finding some stone tools. At one point we found the carcass of a young whale. The smell at the beach level made me nauseous, so I retreated to the cliff tops. You can see the gray whale's throat pleats in the shot there.
Is that a mandible down there, Stu? And shell midden all on the top. I'd say they probably came here to feast on the whale. It smells like it's been dead for a long time.
My queasy attempt at black humor. All along the top here are shells from people harvesting them out in the shallow water and then eating them up on the cliff tops. This would have been from pre-Columbian times. And the delightful Sally Lightfoot crabs. These are as bright in real life as the Mexican tourist trinkets. Towards the end of the trip, we leave the coastline and do a longer open water crossing to Isla Coronado. For the last campsite, we set up on a white sand beach beside a turquoise lagoon with the old volcanic cone of the main island in the background. It can't get much better. It can, of course, get worse, but we'll see that in a bit. Again, shells marked middens where campsites have been, both along the coast and inland as well. Climbing to the summit is moderately difficult, and you definitely want to go in the morning when it's cool. On this trip, I didn't even make it to the summit because the archaeology just got too interesting. Instead of the density of artifacts falling off to near zero as I went inland from the coast is normal, I saw artifacts sporadically across the Piedmont and then upwards to about 2/3 of the way to the peak. There, on a small bench and surrounding hillsides, I found a very large quarry site, a place where the raw material for flake stones was obtained. There were large pits with worked stone in and around them, and both the rock and the pits themselves were nearly identical to a place I've been called Arrowstone Hills in British Columbia. That place name gives it away. This pit is about 5 meters across and over a meter deep. Tons of rock have been removed to get at the prize at the bottom, boulders of dark gray to black, fine-grained volcanic rock with a nice conchoidal or scalloped fracture. This fracture allows controlled breakage with very sharp edges and has been a key to human technology for hundreds of millennia. I found hammerstones here, round pebbles carried up from the beach with worn flat spots from hammering. People came to the island not to live permanently but to take back supplies of this rock to the mainland. They clearly were making what archaeologists call biface preforms, the early and middle stages of reducing large flakes of rock to finished knives and projectile points. But how did indigenous people get to the island? Perhaps surprising to most northerners, dugout canoes were almost unheard of. There simply aren't enough big trees on Baja, but a few canoes were traded in. People traveled by water, usually on reed boats with double-bladed paddles, a link to our craft. The Baja reed boats were very simple, almost rafts, but clearly they worked well. Not only did they get themselves and a water supply to the island, they must have gone back with a heavy load of stone tools and preforms. While we were coming down from the mountain, a strong El Norte, or northerly wind, sprang up. We had an invigorating paddle back to the camp, after which Ryan and I spent an hour surfing on the waves that followed. The gale blew fine sand through the tent window mesh, and we had to move the kitchen to a sheltered place to keep the stove alight. I was very glad of a down jacket that I'd brought along. By morning, the wind moderated to about 15 to 20 knots. As the tour group were all accomplished paddlers, we didn't need to follow plans B or C. Ryan coached us through the surf lines and upwind into the swell, till we could turn safely downwind and run the last miles to Loreto, the end of the trip. Don't let these last clips put you off paddling in Baja. It's very rare for an entire group to have the skills to comfortably, even enthusiastically, paddle in similar conditions. More often, the group would launch from the sheltered side of the island, arrange an alternative transportation, or simply wait for calmer conditions. But we reveled in it.
Yo no sabía